Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Phil Alvstad, sitting down with Mr. Keith Myers. Hey Keith.
Hey, so we're talking about another Seahawk loss again, and this time they lost to a bad team.
Yeah, and we went into this game, Keith, saying, if they lose to the Atlanta Falcons, what's that say about the rest of the year?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they lost. I mean, they played good enough on offense to win, but their defense was absolutely horrible. In fact, it just keeps getting worse. It's like they started out bad against Denver. It got really bad against the 49ers, and they barely showed up in this last game.
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta's not good. And to give up that many points, right? To give up
to give up 400 yards.
400 yards of
overall.
Offense to a guy in Mariota who's kind of a career backup. I mean, he's been a backup for a couple of seasons, but he wasn't good in Tennessee. That's how he ended up as a backup for a couple of seasons. They give up a ton of yards. I mean,
and let him run all over him too.
Yeah, and the running defense just has not looked good yet at all in any game.
No, and. Okay, so who are the two or three players that you point to in that situation specifically?
Like
Daryl Taylor, Cody Barton, and Poona Ford? I mean, who else is out there not making the right reads and plays?
Quentin Jefferson has gotten himself out of position a lot. And
Jordan Brooks, let's say it. Jordan Brooks
played better in this game.
Yeah.
He played better in this game than against San Francisco. He was up. You look at his tackles. He made a bunch of tackles up closer to the line of scrimmage. He wasn't tackling 7 or 8 yards downfield.
I'll give you another guy. Miles Adams. Miles Adams looked horrible in this game. Had the worst grade. Well, one of the worst grades overall in this game.
Yeah, but Miles Adams is a guy. He's the last man on the defensive line depth chart. He's only playing because Shelby Harris is hurt.
It's true, but Shelby Harris is hurt. I mean, it is what it is.
Shelby Harris. They lost their best defensive lineman because Shelby Harris was like one of the guys. Him and Al Woods were both playing well up front, and that's it. Poona Ford has not shown up this year the way he has in past years. I don't know if it's the new scheme and what they're asking him to do, or that they're moving him around a little bit, but he just hasn't been as good.
So just overall, just real quick, is it the scheme? Is it the players? Is it the communication? It seems like we've seen this movie now 3 years in a row, Keith, where the defense starts like this and they make some, interesting players only meeting and they dumb down the scheme a little bit and all of a sudden we look better. Is that what we're going to be looking at in another couple of weeks, or what's going
on? I don't know. I have the last couple of years there was some coaching issues that were part of the problem. There was some guys just playing like freelancing instead of doing their job.
Yes. Are you seeing that right now?
It's hard to tell because of the new scheme switching to a 3-4. It looks like you have guys not that they're freelancing and getting themselves out of position because they're not doing their job that way. They're just failing at their job. And mainly I'm talking about the edge setters, the Daryl Taylor, Quentin Jefferson, Boye Mafe, just not able to stop the runs from getting around the outside.
Boye Mafe looked good though.
He looked good at times. He
Yeah.
also failed to set an edge, came running inside and watched the running play run around him right back to where he was. At least a couple times. It's I don't want to be too critical of the young guys because they're up there and they're learning. The game still moves really fast for them, and they're asked to make these reads, in a split second.
But a lot of the problems we're seeing are guys that are seasoned guys.
Yeah, they really are.
The interesting thing is that we kind of expected this on the offense, but not on the defense. I mean, we kind of went into the season thinking that the offense was going to be kind of a hot mess. We're going to have a hard time scoring points. Geno Smith's gonna struggle. The offensive line has got a couple of rookies and a new center. It's gonna be kind of hit and miss. We weren't talking about the defense being the issue, holding this team back from being in games, but it is, and it's hard to pinpoint because, like you said, you can't even tell if it's the scheme or if it's the player because the play is so bad. It's like I watched Cody Barton isolated on a play that was on Twitter, and he clearly missed getting into the hole. But speculation from like Brock Heward and those guys is that it was really a Miles Adams issue. That Miles Adams filled the wrong gap. Cody Barton saw that and needed to compensate. Came inside and the run just went right around him on the outside. It was just a poor read all around. But the initial blame was Adams did not. His assignment was incorrect. So it's just one of those deals.
When you're doing that, when you're missing your assignments, especially in a 3-4 as one of the defensive linemen, everything behind you is messed up. You can't have guys missing assignments. If a guy misses a tackle and it ends up being an 8 or 9 yard run, that sucks. But at least everyone did their job. You put someone in position to make the play, and he just missed it. If you are not doing your job, you're setting up everyone else on the defense there to get beat too. And you've got to do your job. If you fail at it because you're not good enough player, well, that's a different thing. It's different than if you are just not in position because you decided to do something else.
So, everybody, the consensus, I want to see if you're in the consensus bucket or if you're in the contrarian bucket, Keith, on the offense in this game.
I'm always contrarian. It doesn't matter the topic.
Everybody seems to think Geno Smith had a really solid game. Wasn't the difference maker in the game as far as the win or loss. And you could argue that he kind of helped the team at least be in this game. Overall, the running game looked a little better. They had over 100 yards rushing. The tight ends came to play again. The offensive tackles looked good, created a nice pocket for Geno to operate in. Overall, until the last drive, it was a pretty good outing, I thought, by the offense.
Yeah,
what do you think overall?
I thought the offense did enough to win. Granted, in this game, I'd love to see them. Be a little more efficient on third down and that kind of stuff. And I'd love to see them do a better job in terms of just making plays when they need to be made. I mean, because they make a bunch of plays in a row and everything looks good, and then things bog down and they settle for a field goal. And I think that's partly a quarterback talent issue. But overall, I think the offense was good enough for this team to win. You need the defense to step up and make a play, or you need Geno Smith to do Russell Wilson things. And at the end of the game, at the end of the game, when you have the ball with 2:53 left, and you're down by 4, to take the team down the field and score.
So let's talk about that drive. So Geno gets the ball. We start driving. He makes some great plays. We had a good run. We had a good throw to set us up down the field in deep in Falcons territory. And then Damian Lewis had his second holding call of the quarter that put him back 10 yards. And then they started to press a little bit. They got, I think they got sacked once. Geno got sacked. And then he pressed at the last second there and threw the interception on 4th down with 18 to go or something like that. So that was the end of that. But I agree with you overall that they were successful in driving. They only had the ball possession wise 3 times in the second half. That's not on the offense, I don't think.
No,
they only scored 3 points out of that, and they didn't sustain the other 2 drives they did have, but they've got to have 4 or 5 opportunities in a half. I mean, they just do. Most offenses do in the NFL. Seattle's clearly the worst defense currently in the NFL right now. They're 31st overall in stopping the run. The only other team that's worse is Houston, which was projected to be the worst team in the NFL this year. And so it's kind of bleak a little bit, at least on the defensive side. Pete seems optimistic that he's going to be able to figure it out and throw situations at it. He's going to change up personnel. It sounds like Boye Mafe is in fact going to take more reps on first and second down, as well as
which I think
the other kid. What's the other kid's name? Daryl Johnson. So Daryl Johnson was signed off a practice squad a couple weeks ago, was expected to kind of just be a special teams player, comes on, starts playing inside the defense, and they figure out he's pretty instinctive and can actually play. And so he's now earned more opportunities as well in this last game. And the guy that is going to have plays taken away from him is Daryl Taylor, our second round draft pick from 3 years ago,
who missed his rookie year, then came back and looked great last year, but he looked great because they had him as an edge rusher. This whole idea of putting him outside and having him cover and read the run and all those kind of things, it's not working. So either, he's got to get more reps in practice and really learn that part of it, or they need to use him as a pass rusher and have him in there on 3rd and long and have basically switch roles between him and Boye Mafe.
Which is crazy because they thought Boye Mafe needed more developmental time and he would be the situational pass rusher this year. Yeah. But you got to do what you got to do. I mean, those are the guys that you got to work with.
Taylor's not playing well. Mafe, give him a shot, right?
So before we get too much further along, I want to let everybody know Seattle signed a running back, Godwin Iwabuke, to the practice squad after a workout. Seattle also worked out notable players. Baylor running back Abram Smith came in for a workout, as well as past offensive center Joey Hunt. I found the Abram Smith workout interesting. Would have hoped they signed him. I think they went with Godwin because of just the 3 years experience. He's also got kick return experience, actually pretty dynamic in that role for the Detroit Lions. But Abram Smith to me had better upside as a running back. So we'll see how that goes.
So is all of that in response to the
Travis Homer?
Travis Homer. Yeah, because my brain went tumor. I'm like, nope, that's not it.
Travis Homer.
Yeah,
has a rib injury. It looks like he's going to be out 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah, so him being out 1 or 2 weeks, I'm okay. Go sign a guy to a practice squad, but this isn't a move where you're like, okay, you're going and getting someone who you're expecting to have to play.
Correct.
Right. If anything, he's one of the call ups off the practice squad, because you can call up a guy twice now, and before you have to sign him, and let him play those couple weeks or just be active for special. So.
Yeah, I agree. And then, so Abuakwe is 28 years old, 6 foot, 212 pounds, out of Northwestern University. Had a nice 40-yard kick return last December, if anybody remembers, against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. What else? So let's talk about the offense a little bit. I mentioned they only had 3 second half drives, and scored or gained 68 yards and had a field goal in that second half. In the first half, Smith went 18 of 25 for 218 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I thought he played really good. I mean, if you really just
No, I thought he played well.
The bias stuff away from Smith that we kind of both have because
he played well in the first half.
Yeah.
Like his completion percentage is down from previous games, but the reason why it's down is because he wasn't dumping everything off, behind the line of scrimmage or 1 or 2 yards downfield. He was actually completing the balls down the field. His at one point, his yards per attempt was like 9.2. And for a guy that typically averages, in the 5 and 6s, note that 7.5 is kind of considered minimum. For him to be up there, I mean, he was playing great. But then what happened in the second half?
Yeah. So I don't know what happened exactly in the second half. We didn't have very many drive opportunities. That's one issue. And then the other issue is that we just made mistakes. I think Damian Lewis in that first holding call that he had killed a drive. We ended up 1st and 20, couldn't convert, had to punt the ball. And then that last drive, we had the holding call at the end there that forced a desperation situation. So it's I don't blame Geno for that necessarily. I really don't. I think any quarterback could have made that interception at the end there. But I think the bigger thing is they were in position. I think Geno needs to convert those things, but it's hard to convert 4th and 18. It just is, especially when you're in the, closer to the red zone, you're at the end of games.
Yeah. But why are you you're in 4th and 18 in part because of the penalty. Okay. But what about the other 3 plays? Right. Because the penalty doesn't advance the down. You still had 4 plays to get those 20 yards and you got 2 of them.
Let's see. Let me see. So we had 20 yards on 9 plays that led to a punt, then 25 yards on 9 plays and the game-ending interception. I don't have any further details. I can't remember, honest. Yeah, but overall, though, I mean, we converted more than 50% of our third downs. You mentioned you'd like to see a little increase, but that's where you kind of want to be. That's the sweet spot. And then they won the time of possession for the first time this year, and they won the turnover battle. I mean, they did everything they could do as far as an offense, I think, to be in any game against any opponent. Now, granted, Keith, this was against one of the worst defenses that the Seahawks will see all year in the Atlanta Falcons. So I want to take that with a grain of salt, but they did what they needed to do. This was all on the defense to me, as far as win or lose in this game.
Yeah, and I will agree with that. The offense did a lot in the first half. They did less in the second half, even in terms of an efficiency standpoint. Yeah, they only had 3 chances, but they didn't do as much with those 3 chances, right? But they did enough. You get 23 points. Like, you have a defense that's worth a damn against what should be a fairly bad offense, and you win that game. And they didn't. They didn't win that game because 5.8 yards per rushing attempt. That's just
against us.
Yeah.
And 168 yards.
Yeah. You're not winning a lot of games when you're giving up that, you're getting gashed like that again in the running game.
True. And they allowed explosive pass plays. I think Mariota had 7 pass plays over 15 yards, and 5 of them were over 20. And
well, in the first half, Seattle's secondary didn't play well.
Tariq Woolen had the interception, which actually was one of the highlights. I mean, Tariq Woolen's going to be a player.
I mean, outside of that play, he got beat a couple times. Mike Jackson, did not look good. I think
let's talk about this.
I texted you at some point late in the second quarter, and I'm like, it feels like, the clock has struck 12 on our Cinderella secondary, because these kids that
Josh Jones,
Josh Jones, Mike Jackson, and even Tariq Woolen had some bad plays in there. It was like all of a sudden these guys weren't playing well.
Yeah.
And where was this depth and the talent and everything that we were seeing earlier?
Where's Artie Burns and where's Jones? Are those guys coming back? Or our coach said Artie Burns, is coming back this week and should be available and whatnot. I don't know what's going on with Jones. He should be out there. I mean, he was our best cornerback last year. He was projected to be our best corner this year.
Yeah,
and Artie Burns was the
starting.
guy that was supposed to be potentially cut and whatnot. Artie Burns ended up being the best corner through 3 weeks of camp. Ended up getting a little dinged up at the end there, and then all of a sudden, Mike Jackson takes his role because he can't go the first week. And Mike Jackson hasn't been playing well. I mean, he had the block punt return for a touchdown, but overall, I'd say he's below league average as a corner on this.
He's 5th out of 5 at cornerback on the depth chart. So my expectations for him being out there starting and playing every down aren't that he's going to be, a difference maker and a guy that you can count on to make plays and all of that. He's down on the depth chart for a reason, but Jones and Burns aren't out there, and they've got, Kobe Bryant playing exclusively in the slot right now. So that means Jackson's out there playing.
And I don't necessarily blame the defensive backs for the ills that are in the Seahawks defense right now, because it really does all start up front. When you're giving up 160 yards a game and you are ranked 30th or 32nd in the NFL in defending the run, teams take advantage of that because you can do run, play action and all sorts of things to kind of bring the defenders up, and it makes it more difficult to defend passes. And that's what's happening, I think. And we've got new players and rookies and guys that haven't played a lot in the NFL. You got Kobe Bryant out there, Tariq Woolen, Mike Jackson. Those guys are inexperienced, learning on the job, and so it makes it hard. And of course, Diggs, you can say that he hasn't looked great or he's playing underperforming or whatever. He's being asked to do a lot right now without a lot of help, especially since Josh Jones was kind of looking okay in preseason, but that has not translated to the regular season.
He looked great in the preseason. Not good. He looked great. And so when Adams went down, we're like, well, at least we've got Jones who's going to be able to come in and play well because we know he's a good player. But he was second on the team in tackles in this game behind Brooks. So that's something. I mean, it means he's coming up and making tackles. Most of those are coming in the running game because the running backs are, they're getting through the line without being touched, and it's either who gets there first, Jordan Brooks or the strong safety Jones, right? But so I thought, he hasn't been like bad, but he hasn't been like great.
Yeah, I think he's been okay in tackling, but he hasn't been great in coverage.
See, I'd like to see them get Ryan Neal in there more.
Yeah.
Or at all. So
right. We haven't called Ryan Neal's name. I haven't even seen him out there for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's on me, but
he's played a little bit in 3 safety sets, but not enough.
So I think, we've seen some good play out of the rookie Boye Mafe lately. He's going to get a chance, more opportunities. I think that's great. Get those young guys out there and see what they've got. This is the year. It doesn't look like they're going to have a great record. Let's go ahead and find out. Al Woods ends up being our best defensive player currently through 3 games, which is not expected, but I'm glad to see Al Woods having a good year. Puna Ford is doing okay.
Would you say Al Woods or Nuosa?
Tariq Woolen. I'm kind of bullish on the kid. I know that he's made a few mistakes, Keith, but he's got near 70 pass grade coverage. I know he's made a few mistakes, but they're asking him to do an awful lot out there.
Yeah, but so you're giving him extra credit because he's a rookie and all of that, but with potential. No doubt. But in terms of actual play.
I think he's doing well. I think the team loves him.
I think so too, but I don't think he's in contention for the best defensive player.
He's not.
I think it's either
right.
It's
okay, Nuasu's doing good.
Nuasu. Those are your options. Because,
so far,
nobody else.
And that's how bleak it really is, Keith.
Yeah, no one else deserves consideration except for those 2 guys.
No, and it's interesting because I was thinking forward to the draft next year. And we've talked a lot about needing a quarterback right away. And now that Geno's kind of playing a little bit, and you're seeing kind of the way the draft's going to fall, even if we have a top 5 pick, and having the defense be so poor and having so many needs, defensive tackle and edge rusher, we're not getting any pressure yet on the quarterback. Our middle linebackers and our outside linebackers are just not suited for this scheme, or they're just not good players. We'll find out in the next, several weeks. Like Cody Barton, it's like, we need to replace that guy. I mean, he's just not a starting caliber linebacker in the NFL. What do we do? I mean, it just seems like there's so many holes now, and I wasn't anticipating that. I guess
you can win with a below average inside linebacker. You can't win with a below average quarterback.
You're in the don't draft Will Anderson camp with the number 1 overall pick. You would rather draft a quarterback, one of the 3 big guys available.
Go draft CJ Stroud and don't think twice about it, because you literally cannot win without a quarterback. You have to do that with the first.
Currently, though, the Seahawks aren't necessarily losing because of Geno Smith, though.
Doesn't matter. They're not losing because of Geno Smith, but he's also not going to win them games. You need a player who can win you games.
Very true.
And the thing is that with another first and 2 seconds, you can go get defensive players with those 3 picks. Will Anderson isn't going to make a big enough difference to all of a sudden make your bad defense good. Right? Probably the only defensive player in the NFL that could make a bad defense look good is Aaron Donald. Everyone else, I agree. You need multiple guys around that player.
I mean, you're definitely if you draft a quarterback first, and I totally get it, and I'm with you. I'm there with you. I'm obviously playing a little bit of a devil's advocate with this discussion, but CJ Stroud is not going to solve all the problems. In fact, if you have a team where you draft a CJ Stroud, but you don't have a roster ready-made to accommodate him, chances are you could potentially ruin him because you don't have
but they've got the
people around him.
That's not the case on the offense, where they've got an offensive line. They've got running backs. They've got receivers. They've got tight ends. What they don't have is a quarterback. The problem with Seattle right now is the lack of a good quarterback and the lack of a defense. Well, you go get CJ Stroud and you're going to put him out there where he's going to have time. He's got guys that can get open. He's got a running game that'll help him out. And then you use your other 3 picks to go work and make your defense better. But Jadeveon Clowney wasn't good enough as a first overall pick at defensive end to make a bad defense good. Right? Myles Garrett has been great on a bunch of really bad defenses. And these are first overall pick defensive ends. They're guys that have been really good, but they're not, the defenses around them aren't good enough. And you end up, it doesn't equate to wins. But a quarterback can equate to wins. And then you go build up the rest of the defense, but you build it up with 3 guys, not 1.
That's very smart. I mean, absolutely. I think that's exactly the way that you would build this team.
And as bad as Denver's looked, Denver's looked so far, I get they've managed to eke out wins against bad teams these last 2 weeks, but they look awful. And Russell Wilson looks really bad so far. He looks. Him and Geno Smith, I bet, have similar stats, and that is
Geno Smith is statistically far ahead of him, actually.
Yeah. And so, how's that for making Seattle's front office look good?
Right.
Trading Russell Wilson at apparently exactly the right time. Now, I expect Wilson to, like, him and his receivers and his line and all that stuff, they'll get it together. But at least as of right now, through three weeks, like, Denver looks like a team that's going to have a top 10 pick. Seattle's going to have a top 5 pick. That's a lot of talent since you have both those in both the first and the second round.
So, status update, Keith. How you feeling? What do you want to see? What are you seeing that you can take away that's positive, and what is the number one thing that you feel like is going to be the most difficult to overcome this year?
There's a lot of positives that I'm seeing. The 2 rookie tackles continue to make strides. They've been, I mean, have they been perfect? No, but they've been good. And the Seahawks haven't had, good play at both tackle positions since they drafted Jermaine Ifedi. Like it's been that long, and maybe even before that. It's, you know what I mean? It's been rough. And so seeing that's been good. The tight ends getting involved.
Colby Parkinson.
Colby Parkinson's looking like a natural pass catcher. It's like, hey, this is what we thought we drafted 3 years ago. Right. Disley's out there making plays and doing stuff, and Fant's got all the talent. So I like that they're able to use the tight ends. That appears to be more of a Russell Wilson thing than an offensive scheme thing in terms of the tight ends. So there's lots that I like in there, and Tariq Woolen. I mean, you can't say enough about him as far as looking good. So. So that's as far as the positives. Those are the things that I look at. You asked where I'm at, like what I'm feeling. I'm feeling like this is a top 5 draft pick team. Atlanta is one of those teams that they traded away some of their best players. They kept one of their star players and traded away the rest of them. And Seattle just lost to that team.
Yeah.
So Atlanta was looking like a team that was going to be right there for the first overall pick. Seattle just lost.
If you really think about it, Keith, we got lucky to come away with a win against Denver. We should be 0-3. Mm-hmm. And you take a look ahead, and I don't know the schedule top of mind after Detroit. I do know it gets more difficult after Detroit. Detroit's the most winnable game out of the next 4, I believe.
Yeah.
And we're on the road against Detroit, and Detroit, while they struggled a little bit, but I thought Jared Goff looked good in that game. They're looking good. They're looking like a competent, well-coached team who's on the uprise, and we'll see how it goes on the road with them.
Yeah, so their upcoming schedule is Detroit, then the Saints, which have a good defense, the Cardinals, which that'll be interesting because the Cardinals haven't looked good this year, and then the Chargers. And then they play the Giants and then the Cardinals again. And that gets you all the way into November. That's a stretch where, there's some winnable games there with the Cardinals, the Giants, and the Lions.
They're not going to be favored in any one of those games.
They'll probably be favored against the Giants.
I don't know. Giants are pretty good.
But they won't be favored against any other team. Maybe, like I said, maybe the Lions. I haven't looked at the line yet this week, but I don't think they'll be favored against the Cardinals. They certainly won't be against the Saints and the Chargers. So you're looking at, I'd say best case scenario out of those 6 games would be 2-4. Yeah. Worst case scenario would be 0-6.
Yeah. Interesting. So, yeah, I mean, this is we pointed to the Atlanta game as being a kind of a critical must-win game only because the schedule doesn't get any easier. And what does it say about your team if you lose to Atlanta at home? And we just did. And
Atlanta might be the least talented team in the NFL. Maybe Houston, one of those two. They've got talent in the right spots, so that's helped. But overall, top to bottom, in terms of roster talent, them and Houston I would say, are at the bottom. And the Seahawks just lost to them in a game when the defense looked terrible.
Have we even been blitzing at all, Keith?
They have, but not a lot. They're doing a lot of 4-man rushes, I think, in order to try and protect the secondary, because you've got guys like Mike Jackson out there that are.
I just thought we'd be a little bit more aggressive as a defense. We were told that. We were told we were going to be a more aggressive defense. that seems to like translate to me into stops behind the line of scrimmage and sacks or disrupting plays so much that you're causing turnovers. And I haven't seen any of that. There's no physical identity to that defense yet at all. And
No.
I'm waiting. Anyway, let's get out of here. We've got another show coming up this week, another 2 shows coming up this week. We'll have lots to talk about, and we'll preview that Detroit game at the end of the week as well. Anything before we get out of here?
No, let's just let's flush this game and move on and let's see what they do this week. This is another winnable game. You're playing the Lions. They're well coached, but they're not particularly talented. So go get a win.
I think, I mean, I want to win this year. I really do. I'm rooting for the team. I want the team to do well. I think the defense needs to play a lot better for the Seahawks to have a chance to be in games in order for us to the offense. I think if we can keep doing what we're doing, that's okay. I mean, that's good enough. If you can have the defense come up and play at the same level, I think we could be a 500 team. But it's just one of those deals. All right. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NWC Hockey. You know where the show's at. Hit that subscribe button and share it with friends and family. Till next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWC Hawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.